Hello and welcome to today's content where we're talking about Prompto since he has been released and he is a free unit. So yeah, since he has been released, without further ado, let's begin. Here we are for Prompto's main job abilities. He will be getting his own personal, which is going to be called Crown's Guard Marksman as his main job. He is going to get Paralyzing Bullet, Swift and Steady, Crown's Guard Sniper skills, Blinding Bullet, Piercer, and Trigger Happy. His limit break is going to be Trigger Happy and it does hit 3 times, so keep that in mind. Specifically for Piercer, as you can see, before the ability is used, you will get defense penetration 40% for himself for that attack only, and his modifier can increase by a total of 60% if at least one of the status elements is inflicted on the enemy target that he is targeting, which is either poison, blind, paralyzed, slow, or dark. As long as one of those, and what I mean by dark is like dark resistance down, as long as one of those are applied, he will gain the extra damage modifier. Now for EX upgrades, his, I believe, Blinding Bullet is going to turn to Dark Problem, which is going to additionally lower dark resistance before hitting the enemy. So this is very nice for himself and for his dark teammates. Additionally, his last and EX ability is going to be Delay Blaster, which does have a chance to inflict slow as well as decreasing CT. So this is very nice to have in terms of like kind of like out agilitying or like outspeeding or outpacing your opponents if they are too slow. Now for his sub-jobs, for his Crown's Guard Marksman sub-job, Gravisphere is so unique and kind of cool, and that it's kind of like Shadow Flare, and as you can see it is a large AoE, but it does attract units in, so it kind of like drags units in or like pushes them out depending on their positioning, but yeah, it does drag them in to that single square that he is targeting, so this is very nice to see. If you want to see an example of the ability kind of like working, you can use Shadow Flare on Helena's vision card, the vision ability, because it is the same thing in terms of like what it does in terms of attracting units in. His other ability is going to be Star Show, which decreases attack, magic, spirit, and defense, and its AoE. I will say, wow, this is very hard for the AI to pull off in auto. This is amazing in terms of whatchamacallit, PvE, guild raids, stuff like that. It is amazing. Just like look at that utility there. It's very nice to have. He also has Cursing Bullet there, which is going to be decrease AP. I mean, that's not bad. It's pretty cool. Here we go. We also have the Sniper sub-job. Most importantly, going to be Dispel Spread. Yes, you see it. He does have Dispel Spread. This is very, very nice to have. Not only is it a 200% AoE damaging ability, it also dispels all buffs. Like, I mean, it depends on the buffs, but like, it dispels all buffs in general. So this is very, very nice to have. Lastly, is going to be his Assassin sub-job. Most importantly, he's going to have Armor Cleaver, which is very, very nice in terms of lowering defense or dealing a very high amount of slash damage. As you can see, the damage modifier for Armor Cleaver is 210%. It is very, very nice to have in terms of just flexibility. So here we are for resistances and passives. To damage types, 5% to slash, 0 to pierce, 5% to strike, 15% to missile, and negative 5% to magic. Also, he's going to have 0% to AoE, single target, and 0 defense and spirit, even at level 120 master ability included. He is a gunner, so I mean, it's kind of to be expected that his resistances and survivability is going to be much lower on the end, but yeah, I mean, they're gunners. They're going to be kind of more easier targets to dying, even though they have much more, usually, utility and range in general. For his resistances to statuses, 50% to blind and doom, which is kind of weird. I mean, doom is not really used almost ever / often, so I mean, it's kind of niche. His statuses are kind of so-so, but I mean, they're not horrible at least. And 10% to charm, which is more used in more light PvP in general. 10% is still not enough, but I mean, better than nothing. For his master ability, it's going to be Mono Dark for the element, and he's going to get 15 defense penetration for himself and then increase attack by 10%. So as you can see here, his defense penetration is going to be lacking in overall. However, you did notice in Piercer, his ability itself does include 40% defense penetration, but we'll get to that in the next slide. He is a 3-move, 1 jump, and 90 cost unit. For passes, what I would highly recommend, it's going to be Customized Scope. The EX upgrade is Customized Scope Plus. Not only is it going to give him range 2, which puts him on par on basically most of, if not all, the rangers in general. He can go further if he wanted to, just like them, but I mean, it's usually kind of a waste of a slot. And he also gets acquired AP up for 50, which for himself, which is pretty good. Remember, this is acquired AP generation by 50% up, not he actually gets 50 more AP in general. So just keep that in mind. And then from here, you would either use Customized Arsenal if you want to get even faster and have missile attack, or Sniper Master if you want a little bit more accuracy, luck slat, and still keep the missile attack damage. For Nishan Flex, Evasion Up, if you really wanted to go an Evasion build with him, which I'll talk in the next slide, you can use Evasion Up if you want it. You will be missing out on one passive though for damage and or like utility, so just keep that in mind. Long range, same thing. If you wanted to really maximize your range, you can do that. However, you will be missing out on either damage or something else. And the acquired AP up, another 50 is kind of crazy to do, even though this does kind of allow him to not actually have to need bells as long as he uses buffs. But that is, once again, using another he is going to be relying on buffs, as well as he's going to be missing out on a different passive. So yeah, it really depends. Those are pretty niche and flex, but I do believe they might be useful in certain circumstances. For his reaction abilities, I'm not even going to explain their other ones. Just use Crown's Guard evasive skills because it's literally reflex. It's literally reflex. I will say, if you want to go for a tankier slash more survivable build for Prompto so he can take hits, Dark Shadow is very, very nice too. Or specifically into physical compositions, Counter Smoke. Outside of that, 99% of the chance you're using the evasive skills, which is basically reflex. Let's be honest, it's just too good to pass up. So here we are at Prompto's rating out of 5. So not only is he a free unit, and we got him for free, I do end up giving him a 4 out of 5. So if you do have a dark team and you either needed a +1 or you kind of wanted to like have more variety in terms of outside of only basically in terms of like relevant units, slash and magic attack types, Prompto is a great like unit for dark that can fill in the missile damage just perfectly. Like I know we have missile damage already on a few other units, kind of like Venera from her dual gunner, but he is not only like very high utility based, but he also does good damage for missile in general, and he has very far range. Like Venera and the other gunners usually have to be very up close because they do not have the extra ranged advantage. So yeah, let's talk about the pros and cons. For pros, he's able to become a very high utility, strong ranged DPS, strong for being a ranged, and can either set up himself or his party by applying status elements or finishing the job himself. His Piercer damage modifier allows him to deal damage, but all his status effects like Poison, Blind, Dark, even Dark Resistance down, he can do it if he needs to. So yeah, he really is versatile on what he can do for your Dark team specifically. He has a very good attack total, he has a good base and total luck stat, and he has extremely high agility, like one of the fastest in the games, especially with his passive if he wanted to go even faster. He is one of the fastest units in the game, so that is very nice to see as a gunner. Now, when he is able to meet Piercer's conditions, for like if they have like a certain debuff on them specifically, that modifier goes up to 225% damage for him, and that is a very good amount of damage. This hits harder than most limit breaks in general, so yeah, just keep that in mind. It will be a very nice hitting ability, especially with the added on defense penetration on it. He will be able to hit tanks decently hard with Piercer's conditions met. He has access to slash and missile damage for high modifiers like Armor Cleaver, for example, 210% on a sub-job. He has 3 viable sub-jobs for what you want him to do. Utility and damage, kind of like as you saw the Gravisphere, if you kind of want to drag enemies in so your team can AoE them harder. If you want more AoE damage in general. He also has the slash variant from the Assassin sub-job, so it really depends on what you want him to do. He has a very good variety for all 3 sub-jobs. Now, due to his good base and total luck stat, with evasive and his luck passive, if you really want to do some crazy fun build, it is possible to make him a pseudo evasion. He will always be behind the meta evasion units. However, because he has evasion up as well as the luck up from his sniper mastery, he can get decently evasive. I'm not gonna say he's gonna be good evasive ever, like especially if we compare them to like Elena, Halloween, Frederica, Zazan, all of them. He will never reach that level at his peak and potential. However, he can still be decently evaded just in general. He has a good total base luck stat, as I said, so this does actually help him in terms of accuracy if you get it for his passive as well. So against evasion units in general, he can have a more favorable matchup because he also has a buff ability for his teammates, which is called Swift and Steady, which does increase the accuracy by 30. So he does have a decent matchup into evasion as long as you're properly equipping him and setting him up for that. He has access to Diamond Coat, which allows him to stack up AP acquired up even more, as well as getting a small bit of missile penetration, which he kind of needs specifically because most of his relevant abilities are going to be missile damage. Gravisphere, as I said, is kind of like Shadow Flare's extra ability where it can drag units in. This is very useful, especially if other units in general are kind of like 1 or 2 spaces out. He can drag them in so your team can follow up AoE damage even further. So this is very, very useful if used in the right hands. Now let's talk about some cons. So Prompto, he has no spirit, no defense, or any other mitigation abilities or options, no barriers either, so he has to have a tank and or stay at range and stay alive. If someone blitzed towards him, kind of like if we use like Farm for example, and she just kind of like walked all the way over with Shikuchi and there's no one else in range and Prompto's right there, she is going to be killing Prompto very, very quickly. He has to kind of have other tools from like his either teammates or vision card setup and equips to survive, otherwise he will die very quickly. Since he has no base missile res penetration, means his missile resistance in general against them is highly effective to tank as him. Unless you want him to use slash damage specifically, which is very easily tankable for most like relevant tanks, he does kind of struggle in that department if they have a lot of missile resistance because he does not have any base penetration. Against defense tanks, with a base of only 15% defense penetration, if you're not using his gun, which is the Valiant gun, and or like defense penetration like items such as like defense bracer, it will cause Prompto to kind of only use the piercer ability, even if you're not hitting the conditions or not for damage, which can lock him out of his other abilities because he's trying to maximize on damage, and without higher defense penetration he will struggle to do that. So his build in terms of equips for damage specifically is going to be a little bit more narrow, like it's going to be more like obvious or like kind of more one-dimensional. Even with the luck setup for him, without actually using his luck passive and or like accuracy gear and a vision card, it still can cause him to miss because he does not have 100% hit ability. So you do have to keep that in mind. He is not 100% against evasion, but he does have a decently favorable matchup into them if you set him up correctly for it. He has no barrier breaks, but he is able to break 3-hit physical barriers quickly with his limit break only. Everything else, he's not going to be able to break it quickly. So him, by unit himself, he kind of struggles to make an impact due to he has to require setup from himself or his teammates to deal high damage with Piercer, or he sets up for his team specifically, so he does add well to a team, but he does not carry a team, if you know what I mean. Like Dwayne and Helena specifically have the tools to carry a team, however they kind of lack adding onto a team just randomly and just being like efficient. And what I mean by that is like Helena is not giving spirit, defense, or like defensive buffs to her team. Like she can give accuracy, but only accuracy, you know? Like it's not the same compared to Prompto. Like Prompto adds well to a team. He doesn't have the damage for it, but he does have the good utility to it. So he really complements Helena and or Dwayne very well in terms of what he is able to do for them. Because he is able to, like, his kit is kind of like centered around dealing status elements, he will need high faith if you want like a more RNG favorable chances. So this can also in return, if he raises faith, make him take very high magic damage, so you do have to be like worrisome about that. Also, with Re-Raise and Immortal Spirit still being very rampant and popular in terms of meta compositions, Prompto can't really remove these buffs because the spell does not remove those. They are more special conditions to be removed. So yeah. However, you can still use the spell spread to remove tank hate if generated by an ability specifically. So like Engelbert, Warrior Light, like Rain, stuff like that, he can remove their hate with the spell spread. So this is very useful in terms of like that utility. And ironically, while Jaden is like, you're like, oh wait, how is Prompto going to be into like light units in general? Ironically, Jaden is an extremely good unit into Prompto. So Prompto does get countered by Jaden. And I know I don't like using the counter word and I've been saying it more often, but it really is true because Jaden has a 30% base missile attack resistance compared to Prompto's. And Jaden does have missile resistance penetration to a good degree while Prompto does not, in terms of how much they can increase it by. Like, yeah, it's one drill shot from Jaden and he's piercing through your missile resistance. However, Prompto is locked heavily to only diamond coat for it. Other than that, he does not have anything to lower it for himself. And lastly, without multiple turns of buffing for AP, even with his 50% acquired AP up, if he wants to use his limit break and or constantly output abilities because of how expensive some of his abilities can be, kind of like the spell spread specifically, he needs AP generation in some form. It doesn't necessarily have to be bells, but it does have to be in some form. It's not going to be as bad as others since he does have acquired AP up, however he still does need it. Now for his TMR chase rating specifically, it's going to be Prompto's camera, which is an accessory, has a decent amount of HP, has good accuracy at 14 actually, and decently good crit rate at 12. However, the active ability, which is going to be inconspicuous, it's gonna lower his hate by 6, which is good. This makes it so that units in general have a lower chance of targeting him. However, it restores CT up to 250 for himself, which is kind of like half of what Keenblade is, specifically for the user. Keep in mind, why I give this a 3 out of 5 is that it's hard to make proper use of this in class match. And what I mean by that is that if you have access to Keenblade, not only is Keenblade AoE and it gives more CT, it's very nice for that situation. However, this camera in autoplay, since it lowers hate in general, which is only tied to auto battles in general, this does mean that the restoring the CT, it might push that unit too far ahead. So it is something to consider, but it's not necessarily a useless TMR, but it's definitely more not oftenly used. But yeah, this is basically my Prompto rating out of 5, and since he did go above the 3.5 rating, which I'm going to actually raise to 4 soon, because I'm a little worried that there's going to be a lot more 3.5 units that don't really deserve example setup. But anyways, because he does have a 4 out of 5 at least, I do have an additional slide for him for example setup. And here we are at the last slide for Prompto and my example setup for him. So obviously he's going to be with Dwayne and Helena specifically. Maybe a little bit more defensive on the equipment build for Dwayne specifically, so that Helena and Prompto can kind of carry the rest. But yeah, he's going to be using his own gun Valiant, as I said before, because of the defense penetration. Diamond Coat for extra AP, and then using Summer Killface Scarf for not only for the shell benefit, but also because of the additional AP generation if, in this scenario, if Dwayne is using bells. So yeah, this is something what he would use. For Espers, I specifically picked Behemoth, mostly because of the dark attack as well as the critical damage nodes that Behemoth does have. Because we don't have a traditional dark attack, missile attack Esper, you kind of have to think outside the box specifically for Prompto here. And here he would be using specifically the Diablos vision card, not only to increase the team's damage and dark damage, but also get that light resistance up for everyone else, while he's going to be kind of like whittling away at everyone at the backside, but still not losing out on damage because of the dark attack up. Future stuff to consider. Center Robes. If you did do the Diablos build as well as using Center Robes for a really defensive setup, it is possible for him to survive some light damage in general, but it is something to think about for Center Robes. I will say, since he does not have access to, I believe it's Survival Vest as well as Black Garb, he does not have those options for armor, so he's going to be kind of either using just Diamond Coat or Center Robes depending on your build. Now, missile resistance in general and strong DPS in general are very good matchups into Prompto, and what I mean by this is that since he has very poor survivability in general, anything that really hits him, kind of like a Frederica, as long as their reflex doesn't proc, he will die. Like, he's going to be very squishy unless you have a very, very defensive build for him specifically. Jaden is a very good unit into him because, as we said before, the missile resistance situation. Thancred, I know not really many people are going to use him. Even on his EX, I know some people are not going to use him. However, he does have an insanely good missile resistance, which is going to be very, very nice for him to tank against Prompto in general or take hits from him without caring. And then lastly, we know Cloud. Cloud, because of the mono lightning setup, which is extremely effective against slash and missile specifically because of what a vision card setup Cloud has, he is very effective into missile and slash units, as well as Cloud being strong enough to literally single one punch Prompto in almost 99% of situations without having to worry about if it will kill him or not. Literally, that's just how squishy Prompto is and how strong Cloud will be in that battle situation. And yeah, well, since we've come to the end of the video, I hope you like it, what I talked about Prompto, and yeah, until next video, peace out.